The Tories would like you to believe that all this mess that we've had from, the transition to a brand new government just getting their feet under the table, sorting themselves out, is entirely that government's fault, that they have nothing to do with it, that they haven't been the ones in power for the past 14 years, especially given the last 2019, they were the ones with a massive mandate to do all kinds of stuff, which, well, they proceeded not to do. We had Kimmy Badenoch talking about how horrible the immigration problem is. We learnt today immigration numbers are down by 20%. You know, you had Rachel Reeves at the CBI not too long ago saying she never wants to do another budget like that again. She said she had to make lots of really hard decisions. She said the next couple of budgets, the next budget she's going to have to make will not be like that. That is particularly, good news. But one thing in particular we should really note is, of course, the Chagos Island deal. Now, I think handing over the island, the Chagos Islands, is perfectly right. It's good to do. It rights a lot of wrongs that we did back in the day. However, this deal has become a little bit complicated. But you should never forget who actually rubber stamped this deal. That was, of course, James Cleverly and, of course, Rishi Sunak. And remember, a lot of people, even though they will not admit it, a lot of people should be looking to the Tories who did this deal. And one of the big reasons why James Cleverly lost out on that round in that Tory leadership contest when this deal came out was because he was the one who did it. And he lost a lot of support for that, ultimately losing him now the momentum to get into the final two. That had a lot to do with it. But of course, now with Donald Trump coming in and everything else, you've got Nigel Farage apparently trying to rally Donald Trump with legal advice from Brexiteers, of all people, trying to stop him from get him to veto this deal. And of course, I guarantee you, this deal maybe will could collapse on Friday. And trust me, if this deal collapses, expect the Tories to go to town on how embarrassing this is for Starmer and Lammy. Never forget, they were the ones who did this deal, who rubber stamped it, who okayed it. Starmer and Lammy, they inherited this deal. There's not a lot they can do about it when it's already had been rubber stamped by not only by Sunak and Cleverly, but by the Pentagon and by Biden as well. So what are they meant to do? Like, what are they meant to do on this? If this deal falls apart, they've had nothing in any of negotiations or anything like that. They've done absolutely nothing. They haven't even touched this. This is something they inherited that was already going through. But again, expect a lot of accusations being thrown around, certainly if this deal falls through on Friday and over the weekend, should this happen. So I'm sort of preempting you to what could potentially happen on this, but it is worth looking into more on this. So before we get more into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and the notification link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And of course, there's the YouTube thank you button, and there's the Pony Club down below as well. So thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel. And let's crack on then into this. So this comes from The Independent with the title of Starmer faces, quote, total humiliation with Chagos deal on the brink of collapse. He really doesn't, because what input has Starmer had on this deal? He's had nothing. He's had no input onto this deal. This was an entirely Tory problem. This was their deal. They did. If it fails and falls apart because people like Nigel Farage trying to, rally Donald Trump to veto this deal, That's on them and Nigel Farage, not on this current government. So, Keir Starmer has been warned that he faces, quote, total humiliation on the world stage with his plans to hand over the Chagos Islands to the Mauritius is now on the brink of collapse within at least the next 48 hours. Keir Starmer's national security advisor, Jonathan Powell, is now heading to the US in a very late bid to now dissuade Donald Trump from vetoing the controversial deal. Doubts have now been raised also by the new Prime Minister of Mauritius, Nalvinda Ramgoola, I think that's how you say it, who expressed, of course, doubts about the deal struck with his predecessor. After meeting with Ms. Powell earlier this week, Ramagoosa said, I'm informed about them, and I have wished to have at least more time to study the details with a panel of legal advisors. Of course, she's coming into a position as well, or at least they're coming into a position as well on this. If they want to renegotiate the deal, that is fine. But I still do think, regardless of what happens, we should be going ahead. Because remember, there is an international law court basically saying, yeah, you should hand these islands, or this island in particular, back to Mauritius. The only problem here is, of course, is that US base. Because we did a deal in the 60s and 70s for them to have that base, and that was on like a 99-year lease. That lease is, of course, still going, but we are handing the island back. You can see where the problems are coming in here. It is, of course, the issue around that base in particular. So, previously, though, the new president had described it as high treason and a sellout because the US and the UK would still be allowed to use the airbase on the island in the Indian Ocean. The new Mauritian government's first cabinet meeting will take place on Friday, where they are expected to look to whether to actually continue with the deal, which is due to be completed by next summer, leaving the entire agreement now on the brink. However, even if they do agree to stick with it, Trump's team are now hardening their opposition to what they consider to be a major security risk now for the West. The UK Prime Minister and his Foreign Secretary David Lammy have now insisted that they have no choice but to hand over the Chagos Islands, including Del Dago Gavala, let me say it properly, where the UK and the US have, of course, a major Air Force base, to Mauritius because of a ruling of the International Court of Justice. Mr. Lammy has now doubled down on this, claiming that the deal is a good one, guaranteeing, of course, the use for the airbase for at least the next 99 years, but the government, of course, refused to publish details about the costs of the deal. Tory Shadow Defence Secretary James Cartledge said, who had been pressing for answers, told The Independent, if this deal collapses, it will be a humiliation for Starmer and Lammy. Bear in mind who did the deal. It was, it was the Tory government. It was James Cleverly. It was, they've got nothing to do with it. Starmer and Lammy have nothing to do with this deal. Lammy, of course, told MPs on the Foreign Affairs Select Committee that he is, of course, confident that this will be agreed and concluded with the new Mauritian government. Needed, of course, time to at least study it. He said that we've only just engaged with the new government in Mauritius and that there had been an exchange of letters between the Prime Minister and the new leader. We've got to give them at least time to get into the agreements and hope that we can still sign the treaty. He dismissed the previous comments, of course, on high treason as being words used during an election campaign. Asked, of course, about the incoming Trump's administration opposition, he noted the national securities agencies in the US think this is a good deal. The State Department think this is a good deal. Most importantly, the Pentagon and White House think this is a good deal. Yes, all the current White House, of course. This, of course, is going to be thrown into massive problems if Trump comes in and just says, oh, well, this is a bad deal. Then what? Yeah, then what do we do? Then what do you do? And at that point, of course, remember this embarrassment is not on Starmer and Lammy for here. This is on Sunak and Cleverly. They were the ones who did this deal. They were the ones who did this. This was done, and this deal was agreed to and done under the previous Tory administration. Labour have had nothing to do with this. And it's just the way already this has been framed. And we already said We've already said about the problems that Labour are having, that they need to be really out there communicating with us more. If I were Lammy, I'd be out there going, well, hey, it's if this deal falls apart, wasn't our fault. We inherited this deal from the previous government. You know, you've had Nigel Farage lobbying Mr. Trump to do this. Again, you put pressure on Farage from doing that. You know, and then again, you can probably go and approach the new leader about this. If they're not happy with the deal, start a new one. You know, but there you go. So Mr. Lammy also declined to say whether the alleged phone hacking by the previous government revealed by the Independent was a problem, of course, in the negotiations, but told MPs it was being investigated properly. On Wednesday night, Culture Secretary Lisa Natalie told ITV's Rob Preston that he was confident Mr. Trump would not veto the deal. My experience of President Trump the last time he was in office, that his team was, of course, very pragmatic. They will at least see our mutual interest, they will said. We'll see. We'll see what happens, of course, on this. But the big one is, of course, is this intervention from Nigel Farage and legal advice now sent by Brexiteers to Mr. Trump, the incoming president, looking now for a way to veto it without embarrassing Starmer. So there is, of course, a lot of problems around this. There's then, of course, you get, well, if this does get handed over to them, which again, I think is fair, if you've already got this joint US base and it is pretty much going to stay there, I don't think, you know, the Mauritius government, like it or not, was going to stay there. They then might allow China to also build their own rival base, which could then, you know, be a bit of a thing. And of course, remember, as it rightly recommends there now, Marco Rubio is the new Secretary of State. They're going to be taking a lot more hawkish, hardline stance on China over the next couple of years. So yeah, this is a good deal, but it's going to get torpedoed potentially, probably by Trump. If it does fall through, then guess what? Starmer and Lammy can go and actually, you know, pursue new negotiations. Big problem, of course, is that airbase. There was already, you know, a lease for us to be, you know, leased for like the next 99 years. Even if you hand over the island, you can't just go in and say that lease is gone now. You know, of course, the Mauritius government are probably going to get, you know, a lot of money. That's what these leases, you know, end up doing for the particular government. But that's up to Mauritius what they do. Like I say, once we hand the islands over, it's up to them what they want to do with it. You know, it's their stuff now. So, you know, up to them. But depends how much of a Chinese puppet they want to become. Probably, who knows? But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens on that front. But yeah, just so that you can try and preempt any of this nonsense happening. Yeah, this deal, if it falls through, Starmer and Lammy had nothing to do with the negotiations. They weren't even in government when this deal was signed, was, well, not signed but agreed to. Pretty much, they've had no say in this. It's Cleverly and Sunak, or mostly Cleverly, that did it. It's why he lost so much support, that probably lost him his chance being in the final two. And there we are. So if this deal does fall through, this is another classic Tory failure. Who knew we'd still be having or talking about classic Tory failures even this late in the game? So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.